Okay, let's start. That is Chlorophyta, that is the green algae. So this is a brief description about green algae that will help last minute revision. So green algae is normally called as Chlorophyta. Got it? And it is regarded as the most advanced algae and is considered as the ancestor of the higher plants. So normally green algae give rise to the higher plants. So normally higher plants originates from this green algae. And the habitat is mostly freshwater. Some of them are marine and terrestrial in nature. So those who are marine and terrestrial means these are the habitats. So freshwater and marine means the algae are found to be present both terrestrial in nature and also they are what? Aquatic in nature. They are also aquatic. Now let's move into the next part, that is called as the thallus organization. What do you mean by thallus? Thallus means no differentiation of stem, leaf and root. Stem, leaf and root. If any plant body is not differentiated into leaf, stem and root, then they are called as the thallus. So normally let's talk about this thallus. First thallus is that is unicellular, means which group are made up of only a single cell, unicellular in nature. So unicellular organisms are like Chlamydomonas, but Chlamydomonas have the unicellular organism with the two flagella on it. So these are motile. But when we move on to chlorella, we don't find they are what? They are non-motile because there is no flagella present on chlorella. Got it? And one of the best algae that is called as Acetabularia, which is used in the experiment, and this Acetabularia is sometimes called as the umbrella plant. It is called as the umbrella algae, sometimes called as. So these three algae are of unicellular in nature, means made up of single cells. Let's move the second thallus organization, that is called cenocytic. Cenocytic means if any algae made up of many nucleus. So they are multinucleated. So multinucleated is otherwise called as cenocytic. And the best example is called Chlorophyta. But this Chlorophyta is what? That type where it is not colonial in nature. But same logic when we go for volvox. This is the diagram of volvox. So when we move on to volvox, volvox is the aggregation of, it is made of aggregation of that is called as Chlamydomonas. Got it? So volvox is made by the aggregation of Chlamydomonas. So in this volvox we find that many small daughter algae are present together and they form a colony-like structure. So these are colonial in nature. Got it? And now let's move into the next one, that is called as a filamentous. So filamentous means this is the filament-like structure. Got it? And we find they are normally unbranched. What are the unbranched? These are the examples which normally ask in a NEET exam. Ulothrix is unbranched, Spirogyra is unbranched. Branch, that is Cladophora. In Cladophora we find that branching system takes place. In Cladophora we find branching is present. And as heterotrichous means we find different types of branching is found to be present. In same plant we find different type of branching, like it resembles like land plants. Like that is called as Fritzschlia tuberosa. Got it? So these are the examples of filamentous type. Now let's move the advanced type, that is called as parenchymatous type, which is a looks like thallus-like organization. So this is the structure of a ulva-like structure. So ulva are mostly thallus with a parenchymatous nature. The body is differentiated like this. So this is parenchymatous and this is the structure of that is plant, that is called as the ulva. Got it clear? Now let's move into cell character. So normally when we move into the cellular organization, we find they have a cell having a cell wall, but the cell wall is of two types. The outer part is made of some cellulose, that is called as pectose, whereas the inner one is made up of cellulose. So we find two different layer of cell wall is present. The outer one is made up of that is called as pectin or pectose, and the inner one is made up of cellulose. And this pectin is dissolved in water. So when it dissolves in water, it secretes some mucilage around it, for which they are very slippery in nature. So due to the reaction of pectin, this pectose reacts with water to form a mucilage like slippery like appearance. So mostly algae are slippery in nature. Okay. Now let's move into its pigment. We find the algae as it is a green plants, so they will synthesize their own food and they have the pigments present. Like chlorophyll is the universal pigment and simultaneously it also contains chlorophyll B. And it also contains the universal pigment that is called as beta carotene. And in addition to beta carotene, it also contains luteoxanthin and violoxanthin as the pigments. Got it clear? And when we go for stored food materials, the foods are stored in the form of starch but in the form of protein bodies, that is pyrenoids. Means for example, these are the protein bodies present and these protein bodies are surrounded by starch. So these are surrounded by starch. So these are outer part is called as the starch. So these are the starch part and this the inner part is the protein part. So together it is called as the pyrenoids. So pyrenoids are reserve food materials of this green algae where we find the starch surrounding the proteins present at the center. This is the reserve food materials. So in algae, green algae, we find the true starch is the reserve food materials which is stored in the form of pyrenoids, and these pyrenoids contain starch bodies with protein bodies present at its center. Now let's move into its mode of reproduction. It has got three modes of reproduction: vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, sexual. In vegetative reproduction we find mostly it is by fragmentation, means the body differentiated fragments and each fragment gives rise to new individuals. But in asexual reproduction is by means of spores. So asexual reproduction is by means of spores. And we find the spores present are called as zoospore. Why zoospore? Now the G spores having flagella. The spores having flagella is called as zoospore. because they are motile spores. And normally the maximum numbers flagella may present from 2 to 8 in number. So we are discussing this brief, but in a long video, we'll discuss everything with neat label diagram. Got it? Okay, and when we move on to sexual reproduction is by means of gametes. Sexual reproduction is by means of gametes. So when we move on to gametes, isogametes, where the gametes are very same in nature. Anisogametes, where we find the gametes are different in nature. And oogametes, where we find one gamete is fixed and another gamete is motile. Means it is a gamete present where the female, the oogametes, where the female is non-motile and the males are motile. So these are the three types of mode of its reproduction. Now move to life cycles. We find three types of life cycle. Haplontic life cycle, mostly haploid in nature. Diplontic life cycle, mostly diploid in nature. And haploid-diplontic life cycle where we find 50-50 haploid and diploids are present. Got it? If the life cycle contains maximum part N and minimum part 2N, it is called as haplontic. If the life cycle contains maximum part 2N and minimum part N, it is called as diplontic. And if it contains both haplontic and diplontic equally, it is called as haplodiplontic. Got it? And these are the examples. These are very important examples. Haplontic are Eulothrix, Pyrogera, and Chlamydomonas. Diplontic is called as Caulopa. And haplodiplontic is called as ulva. Is the best example is ulva. Now let's move to the last part, that is called the economic importance. When we move on economic importance, why this? What are these algae used for? So these algae are mostly used for food, for antibiotics production, for space research, and also as a food for space food. That is, spirulina is used as the best space food. Chlorella is also used as the research materials. And we find a green algae which is parasitic in nature, means causing a disease that is called as red rust of tea, that is Cephaloreus. Cephaloreus is a type of green algae. Very important question. It is a parasitic green algae. Got it? The Cephaloreus is a parasitic green algae. Parasitic green algae. Got it? It's a parasitic green algae that causes the disease that is called red rust of tea. Very important disease. So, being green, being photosynthetic, but they are parasitic in nature. Being green algae, they are parasitic in nature. Got it? And they cause the disease that is called as red rust of tea. So, this is a brief description. This is a brief account about the green algae, which will help you in the last minute revision for NEET exam. Okay. Thank you.